Hello and welcome to the Doof Book Club, our monthly live stream discussion of a book chosen by you, our listeners. My name is Matt Freeman, and I'm joined as always by the ferryman himself, Scott Daly.
Hello and welcome to the afterlife. Sort of. It doesn't make a lot of sense,
I'm so
but we're
curious to find out the nature of this afterlife.
you won't.
Oh,
Hello everyone. Welcome. We hope you're all having a wonderful Friday. It is the 2nd of February. It's a new month in our new year, and it's Friday night, and we're here to have some fun for an hour or so. If you are joining us for the very first time, welcome. We are Doof Media, or at least a part of Doof Media. We make podcasts all about the stories that we love. We also arrange and organize this here monthly book club, which Matt will now explain what is, in case you've never heard of a book club before.
that's right. And in this case, each month, Scott and I select 5 books from a pool submitted to us by our wonderful Doof community. We put up a poll for all of the supporters on Patreon at patreon.com/doofmedia and let them vote on which they'd like us to talk about. The book with the most votes wins, and then we all read it.
And then we meet here on the first Friday of the month and spend an hour or so chatting about the book in question. Before we get into what the book is this month, though, we do have a little bit of homework to do, because one thing we like to do, as Matt said, our patrons get to vote on the book for the next month, but we also let everyone that attends the book club live get their say as well. So I'm about to drop a link in the chat of this here YouTube stream that we're doing, which will send you over to a straw poll that will let you choose 2 of our 5 available books. We will take those votes at the very end of the show. We will add those to the votes from Patreon, and that will get us our final vote for the book. It's a pretty close poll between basically all of these. Every one of the 5 nominees this month are pretty close in numbers, so it's really anyone's game at this point. So make sure you drop in there, vote for your 2, and then we'll announce the winner at the end of the show.
That's right.
We do see a couple people saying hello here. How's it going, Bishop? Hey, Karen. How are you two doing today? Hey, hello to everyone else that is just silently lurking, which no problem. That's what I do. Do you watch streams a lot, Matt? I watch streams a lot, and I don't ever say a word in any of them.
Not a ton, but yeah, I tend not to say anything. I tend not to say anything because nobody ever responds to me when I say things. And we try not to fall into that habit here. We try to be
Yeah.
responsive. So.
Sometimes we get a little swept up in the conversation, but yeah. All right, let's get into the main event, Matt. Let's talk about this month's book. What did we read, and what are we talking about today?
The book we read was The Ferryman by Justin Cronin, and the summary is as follows. Founded by a mysterious genius, the archipelago of Prospera lies hidden from the horrors of a deteriorating outside world. In this island paradise, Prospera's lucky citizens enjoy long, fulfilling lives until the monitors embedded in their forearms, meant to measure their physical health and psychological well-being, fall below 10%. Then they retire themselves, embarking on a ferry ride to the island known as the Nursery, where their failing bodies are renewed, their memories are wiped clean, and they are ready to restart life afresh. Proctor Bennett of the Department of Social Contracts has a satisfying career as a ferryman, gently shepherding people through the retirement process and, when necessary, enforcing it. But all is not well with Proctor. For one thing, he's been dreaming, which is supposed to be impossible in Prospera. For another, his monitor percentage has begun to drop alarmingly fast. And then comes the day he is summoned to retire his own father, who gives him a disturbing and cryptic message before being wrestled onto the ferry.
There was more of that, but I cut it off for your sake there, Matt.
Sure.
It was like 3 more paragraphs. It was a lot that went into in this quick summary on Goodreads.
This is a good hook. I think there's a lot in this description that gets across like the intriguing part of the book, really.
Yeah. Speaking of which, Matt, I want to know what you thought of this book. And while Matt is giving his answer, I want you folks there in chat to let us know as well. What did you think of The Ferryman?
Yeah. So I guess I won't sugarcoat it. I really struggled with the book, especially toward the end. I felt like it really meandered, and at like something like 2/3 of the way through the book, I kind of felt like, hey, this would be a great time to end the book. And it just kind of kept going. And frankly, I stand by that assessment that it probably should have ended somewhere around there. But there's a lot of cool stuff that the book that happened in the book. There's a lot of cool stuff involving character that I enjoyed,
Mm-hmm.
especially toward the beginning. There were a lot of interesting situations. I thought the mystery was fairly interesting at first, and or at least it interested me in the sense that I wanted to keep turning the page to find out what was going to happen. There's a bunch of positive stuff that we can say, and I'm sure we will say, but I think kind of on the whole, I just wish it had cooked in the oven a little bit longer. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm gonna need our audience's help with this one. I did not like this book very much. What I will say is you and I were kind of chatting as we read this book this week, like we normally do, and I think I was much more positive on it than you were for the majority of the story, until the end. And the end actually did a thing that doesn't happen to me very often, which is the ending of this book made me actively angry,
Hmm.
and I did not like it at all, and I'm so annoyed by some of the choices it made, and my interpretations of what it's saying piss me off. So we'll definitely get into that. But yeah, I think up to that, it was a real page. I read this book very fast. I read this book in like 3 days. I wasn't expecting to. You do the thing like, I don't know if you do this. This is how I kind of parse it out. Like about 2 weeks before the book is coming, I start the book and I like have it planned in my head that like if I'm gonna finish with enough time, I need to have read X number of pages by this day, et cetera, down the line.
Yeah.
And and like so I did that, and then like I was just tearing through it and I was like, oh well, I think I'm gonna finish much faster than that, and then boom, 3 days and I was done. So it's not as if I wasn't like enjoying the experience of reading. I felt the book was a page turner. I felt it was captivating enough to keep me going, and the wanting to find out what was really going on here was a good hook. But yeah, the ending, man. Oh, we're gonna have to get into this, but the ending just really pissed me off. It like really made me angry.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it might be a little bit overstuffed, and I say that sort of out of a desire to fix the things that I think are wrong, because I liked it enough to want to fix it, which I
Hmm.
think you can view as a sort of positive statement where you're like,
Sure.
man, I like so much about this, if only dot dot dot. And in my case, I was like, I think that the sort of social commentary aspect was quite half baked. I really liked, meeting Proctor and the other Prosperans, and then it's like, why do we need to introduce this idea that there's the annex and all the other like what does that add to the story? I was gonna say, what does that add to the themes? And it's like, well, I know what it adds to the themes, but I don't like it, and I don't think it improves the book. Um, I think it drags the book down actually,
Yeah.
and it distracts from what was otherwise a really interesting story about like a man's sort of complicated relationship with the idea of the mortality of his own of himself and his loved ones.
Hmm.
It would have been a much. I think I just would have loved this book actually if it just stayed focused and it was like this is a story about mortality and about how hard it is to accept loss and death, and it all comes together if you see it that way, and then
Uh
it's
huh.
like, well, then what's all this other crap hanging on to the sides of the story, right? And yeah, that's basically my feeling about it. Is it's a great story with a bunch of other stuff jammed in there.
Yeah. Well, except for the conclusion is you don't have to accept loss and mortality. You can just go back to sleep
Uh-huh,
and
right.
get your daughter back. Hooray!
Which is what made you mad, right?
Yeah. Uh huh. Uh huh. So okay. So I think let's start with the end. I think we could get into this and we could talk about we can work backwards and talk about all the other things we liked. So the concept here, and if you happen to be listening to this and you haven't read the book, we're about to spoil the big twist and everything that the book has to offer. So if you care about that, stop listening. But essentially this is a story about a man who builds a spaceship to take everyone off the dying planet and go to a new planet, and in order to make the journey they go to sleep and live in like a cryostasis dream world, which is what the location of this whole book is. We learn that our main character and his wife, whose name is Elise, which is also my wife's name, which is maybe part of the reason why this was particularly barbed to me. Right before they were going to leave to go on this trip to the new planet, lost their 4-year-old child in a horrific drowning accident. And the end of the book is essentially um, Proctor wakes up all the dreaming colonists, except for the rich ones that funded the expedition because they need to be punished. He wakes all the dreaming colonists. They go down to the planet and start their life there. And then he puts all the rich ones back to sleep. And then he and his wife join them in the dream world as the ship heads back to Earth for some reason. And he lives in this dream world with a dream version of his daughter that died, and he gets to be happy with his daughter that he lost. So here's why this makes me very mad, Matt.
Okay.
So first of all, if something like this were to happen to my child, like I could not bear it. I don't like. I'm not trying to say like this is not how my reaction would have been. What I'm saying actually is if I lost my child in a horrific accident and you came to me and said, "What if I can put you in a dream world in which you get to see her grow up and live?" I would do that 1,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000% of the time. There is never an instance in which I would not say yes, please to that. Right.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think that's a good thing, right? Like, mm-hmm. I don't think that's like, that's a good message to have of like, yes, you don't have to deal with this loss. You don't you can go into the dream world and have a dream version of this person you lost. Like, the thing I compared it to when I was yelling at you about this earlier this week was it's like if the message of Salem's Lot was, it was good to bury the corpse of your son in the evil cemetery and have him come back to life. That's good, actually.
You mean Pet Cemetery?
Pet Cemetery, yeah. Sorry, yeah, Pet Cemetery.
Yeah,
it's just it's so wild, especially the wrinkle that they add at the very end, which he doesn't know about, is that he has a son. He has a son, or will have a son, because he has an affair with the character Thea right before they leave, and she is pregnant, and he is going to have another child, and now that child is never going to get to meet his father, because his father is living in a dream world with a dream version of his dead daughter. Yeah. And that, I get mad. I'm mad about that. I don't understand what we're doing with this. Like, because it'd be one thing if the book painted this as not a not optimal choice, but the epilogue of the book seems to be this like happy, contented, like, look how good everything is. The bad rich people are learning humility. He and his wife are getting to be happy and content with their daughter, who's 8 years old now, an age that she's never going to get to. And I just felt gross. About it.
Yeah. And it bothered me a lot that Thea didn't even tell him that she was going to have a kid, which basically robs him of the ability to sort of at least like start over and create a new life, and maybe in time come to truly grieve his daughter in a way that is, going to make him something close to whole again. It's very confusing.
I didn't say, because he deletes his memory too, right? He deletes his memory. He doesn't even allow himself to have the memory of losing his daughter. Like, yeah. So he's actively avoiding getting over it. And I'm not clear, maybe I missed this, but did he wake his wife up and like ask her if this is what she wanted to do as well?
I don't know. I'm not sure. Yeah, which is also really bad. Uh-huh. It's like he just decided like, no, we're just going to continue living this delusion. I mean, if you think about just the story of his wife, it's like this horrible tragedy happens. She's clearly very mentally unwell due to it. Yeah. And then they're like, you know what? It's too late for us to find a replacement for you to be like the server of our simulation. So you're going to be the server still. And then your grief is going to sort of soak through everything. And then when we get to our destination, we're not even going to wake you up and give you the opportunity to sort of start fresh. We're just going to turn back around, and we're going to like sort of reformat things, but basically it's all still going to be the dream world. So it's like you killed this woman,
essentially,
and like or like it's like you inserted her into the Matrix without her consent. I kept thinking about the Matrix, and in like an unfavorable comparison type of way, where I'm like, This is like if the moral of the Matrix were like at the end, they're like, actually, it sucks out here. Yeah. So I'll go back into the Matrix and wipe my
remember when
memories.
Cypher says like, I want to forget and I want to eat this delicious steak again? Yeah. That's a good thing.
Yeah. Cypher was the hero, and then he gets put back in, and then the movie ends with Cypher eating steak. And Yeah, it's very strange to me that this is how the book ends, because you feel like, um thematically it makes so much sense. It's called The Ferryman. It's called The
Mm-hmm.
Ferryman. It's about the concept of this man who, we don't know this when the book starts, but the reason why he's obsessed and fixated on this idea of ushering people to the afterlife, which is what his job is that he had this horrible tragedy. He can't actually remember what the tragedy is, but he feels it in his soul,
Mm-hmm.
and he's reaching for some kind of closure or some kind of absolution, or some kind of cessation to the kind of just grief that pervades his existence. And so that's what he's dedicated his life to.
Mm-hmm.
and and the idea that this is the guy who's then going to say, no, let's rewind the clock. Let's pretend she never actually died. Let's just pretend she's not dead.
Yeah.
You're like, what? What?
Especially since like the climax of the book, as Karen is pointing out here, is him going back into the Matrix and reaching out to his wife and bringing the truth of what happened back to her, right? Like waking her up from the delusion and forcing her to reckon with the fact that her daughter is dead. Like this moment of absolute tragedy, but like necessary realization and looking the truth head on, right? That is the climax of the story, and then we just go, nah,
Yeah.
that was good. That we did that, and it woke everyone up. Good. Back to sleep. Back to
Yeah.
sleep. Back with our daughter. It just like, and I guess the question I have here is, am I reading this wrong? Like, am I just reading what the book is saying here wrong? Because it just feels so I don't know. Like maybe Justin Cronin lost a child. Like I maybe he did, and this was part of his catharsis with working through it. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's
I don't
so
know.
strange. It's so strange.
So in the chat, most people seem on the same page as us, unless I'm
Okay,
misunderstanding. And the clarification from Karen is that after the original dream ended, or uh, uh, Elise accepted that her daughter was gone, and
that's how
then,
she woke up, right? Or
yeah, I think
ended the
so.
dream.
Ended
Yeah,
ended the first dream, and
yeah.
and then Proctor takes over as the designer, and he becomes the overlord of the Matrix for the subsequent dream. But it's
Mm-hmm.
like, so I guess she does decide to go back in. I guess we can.
I guess yeah, but we can infer that that was a conscious choice. The book didn't. We didn't see that scene, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Yeah, that's that's the thing about it being kind of just too much. Like,
Yeah.
I really genuinely liked the first part of the book, like maybe the first third, where we're actually focusing a lot on character. We're
Mm-hmm.
focusing a lot on Proctor. I thought Thea was also an interesting point of view character.
Yeah, I agree.
Um, there's there's like a lot of, like, the stuff I love about books, which is like good detailed deep psychology, subtle psychological motivations on different levels that are sort of, leading to this character having a crisis that they don't even really understand. Like, they don't understand themselves well enough to understand, but you still buy it.
Yeah.
um all great stuff. And then it was like there was this sort of high concept plot that needed to happen. And so this like carefully done character story, character
Yeah.
drama, like character driven beginning part of the book just kind of becomes more and more railroaded into this like action movie where people are having gunfights between cars.
That
And
felt
you
so weird to me. And I
Yeah.
think in retrospect it makes sense if you put it in the concept of this is all a dream
Yeah.
and it's operating on dream logic. But yeah, like suddenly like our main character is like an action star that's like breaking into a building and like beating people up, and I'm like, what the fuck is going on?
Yeah.
And yeah, I do think retroactively like that makes sense. The other thing that makes sense retroactively is how nobody seems remotely curious about anything in this
Yeah.
world. Like the entire concept of the nursery and the regeneration is like, don't worry, you're gonna live forever actually, because when you get old you go to the nursery and you get a brand new body. But but your memory is erased.
Yeah.
So it's not you anymore. So what's the difference between
Right.
dying and going to the nursery?
Right.
Essentially nothing. Um,
Yeah. Well, like I think as the reader, not knowing the answer, I was like, wait a second, what it sounds like is happening is you're just going to the nursery and then they're just like, cremating you,
yeah.
and
Yeah.
and then there's just like a clone,
Uh-huh.
a totally fresh clone that maybe isn't even a clone of you, just like some clone is
Mhm.
is sent back, and they're like, here's Fred. And you're like,
Yeah.
and yeah, like like one of the mysteries at the beginning of the book is like, why are people okay with this? Like, is this a
Yeah.
metaphor for the fact that in real life people are weirdly okay about about certain things that they shouldn't be okay about, but they
Yeah.
just kind of normalized it? And it's like, no, that's not really it. I don't think that's
I,
not really the point.
I will say I do agree with you about all the first half stuff, or I guess first third is what you said. The part that the part that really spoke to me was him having to, guide his father to the afterlife, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah, yeah,
I kind of, it broke me a little bit, as a middle-aged guy that is closer to having to have that happen with my parents than not, right? Like that's going to be a thing that within the next 20, 30 years, God willing, is going to be something I'm going to have to go through. And I watched my father have to go through that with his mother just a decade ago or so, and it's like that moment like really really fucked me up. Like it caught me off guard. Like you're going through the motions of this thing, and then I think the moment where his dad sits down and just says like, I just don't want to forget her, like that, like oh my god. And just like having to watch your father experience this thing at like, oh, that was awful. That was absolutely awful. But awful in a way I'm like, damn, this is good shit. Like this is good writing. You like well done.
yeah,
Um, it's really effective writing. Like
yeah.
that's kind of one of the things that I was like, oh my god, what is this book doing? Like I'm totally on board.
Yeah, the whole sequence, that whole sequence. I mean, like the whole beginning of the book until I don't even know what point exactly. Like pretty far into the book, I was like, this is great. Like I'm so
Mm-hmm.
into this.
Yeah.
Like you said, all that stuff with him and his father, extremely dramatic. Uh, really kind of felt fresh. Like it didn't so much matter that I didn't understand the nature of the nursery, because at that point in time, it's like it doesn't matter. It's a metaphor for death. Okay,
Yeah.
your father has chosen to move on, and this is very hard, but it's necessary. And in fact, it's your job. And even the fact that this is your profession doesn't actually make this any easier. And all these things, like this is great stuff. And I mean, I feel like the wheels began to come off the moment that we kind of introduced this idea of like, oh, there's some kind of sinister conspiracy happening. And I was like, I don't really care about
Mm-hmm.
that at all. Um,
Yeah, I agree. The character stuff is so much better than everything else around it. And I think like I'm going to preface this with I don't like being this person, but this book kind of made me this person where like a lot of the stuff in the reveal of what's going on is stupid.
yeah,
so like just part like we learn at the end of the book that this caste system that's been created on these islands was intentionally created by Proctor. The reason he did it was he wanted the future colonists to have like motivation, for hitting the ground running and getting out there and really like struggling to make something out of their lives after they woke up, right? That's his motivation. That's why he set up this system this way. And I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. Like,
hmm
a the way things are on Earth, we were told they probably already were going through something very similar to the system on the in the dream world already, right? Like these were the have-nots of the world that volunteered for this thing. Like they probably already were experiencing that. And B, like the hardships of life and the necessity of survival will probably motivate you to, not want to die, right? Like
hmm
it just doesn't make a lot of sense at all. And
Yeah.
like the other thing that like if you're trying to create a dream world in that prepares people for the realities of what they're going to have to do on this planet, why not make it a dream world that is a copy of what they're going to have to do on this planet? Why not teach them in the dream world like how to survive in harsh climates, how to farm? Like why create this sunny utopia? Like it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
And maybe if that's the lesson is just like, oh, Proctor's just a fucking idiot. Actually,
Yeah.
maybe. It doesn't seem like the book wants you to think that. I don't know.
I don't know. Yeah. Like it feels like there were two fun premises that he wanted to jam together and they just
Mm-hmm.
don't fit, where one of them is this idea of a sort of um, fantastical situation where you have this metaphor for death and moving on
Mm-hmm.
that is a little bit of a twist on death where it's like, well, you don't really die. You sort of die, but you sort of don't die. And it causes you to ask questions about the nature of like, what is it that makes us afraid of death? And it's an interesting way of probing that question, just like all good sci-fi sort of takes a human universal and probes it by putting a twist on it.
Yeah.
And then this other completely different idea about like a sort of colonization generation ship. I know it's not a generation ship, but it's like sort of a generation ship because
Yeah.
they're pretending to be reborn.
Yeah.
And like I love a good, sci-fi kind of space opera as much as anybody, but that feels so tacked on and irrelevant other than just being like the sort of answer. I don't know. I was thinking about like mystery box storytelling and like
Mm-hmm.
Lost, and I was like, would it have been satisfying, like literally Lost? Like if Lost was like, oh, yeah, the reason all the weird stuff is happening on the island is that we're all
It's a
in a shared
spaceship.
dream and we're all in a spaceship, and you would have like, and I think the answer is that people would have been like, okay, I guess that's I guess
Yeah.
that's an answer. Sure. But like what the hell does that have to do with anything? Like it doesn't connect, you know?
Yeah.
Like I watched this TV show a long time ago where this exact same thing happened. Literally exactly the same thing. It was like a cop show about a guy who goes back in time or something, and then all this weird stuff is happening, and then the show was canceled, and because the show was canceled and they weren't going to be able to finish it the way they wanted to, they just had all of the characters wake up on a spaceship from their sleeping pods where they had been having a shared dream together, and that was the end of the series.
Yeah.
And you were like, what the hell is this? Like, this is nothing. This is a clear, like, just pull the eject cord. We're like, we got to have a last episode. What are we going to do? I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Just throw it in their face, basically, that we're not going to end this. Like, that's what
Yeah.
it felt like. Because again, I'm repeating myself, but it doesn't connect thematically. It's like two different themes, and he's like mashing them together. It doesn't work.
Was it Wayward Pines? That's what Evil's saying in chat. Was that the name of it?
I'll check. I don't even
Um,
remember.
uh, yeah. I mean, I agree with you in that, like, it feels like I think it's very clear here that Cronin wanted to write a story that was making a commentary on the state of the world as it exists right now, right? Like there's this very clear, super rich anti-capitalist theme going on here. The concept of have and have nots and like he's crafted a story in which he gets to like punish the rich people,
Hmm.
which is fine, whatever. But I just feel like the way it did it was, as you said, kind of tacked on and just didn't make a lot of sense to me. The other thing that didn't make a lot of sense to me was, or I guess it's not that it didn't make sense to me. It's just like it felt like it was gonna do something really cool and interesting, and then just like zagged away from it immediately. Like there's this thing that he sets up near the end of the book where I forget who it is that wakes up. I think it's Justin, the the person who's his assistant in the story, like wakes up and or no, it's the kid. It's one of the ones that's the little kid suffering in the slum area. And he wakes up and he has all the memories of all the suffering that happened while he was in the dream, and it's like he was of the cast of poor people that had to serve the rich people, and he's fucking pissed off about it. And there's this moment in the book where they're like, oh, every person that's from the annex that wakes up is going to be like super pissed off and this is a thing we're going to have to confront. They're going to be pissed off at all the rich people, but also at me, Proctor, and everyone on my crew that allowed this thing to happen. They're gonna be super pissed off about it. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. That's going to be this really interesting dynamic that we're going to have to solve. How are we going to handle this? And then the book just kind of goes like, and then a weird thing happened. Everyone just kind of forgot about it and moved on. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, oh, okay. Well, why'd you introduce that in the first place? And I was like, I just didn't like, it was just a weird zag, like where it's like, it almost felt like he had was on a deadline and was like, I don't have time to work this in to this book. So
there's so much stuff in there that felt like that. Well, I just lost it because you finished the book before I did, and I got to the point where all of our like key protagonist characters have woken up and they're out of the Matrix and they're having a meeting and they have understood everything that's of importance. And then their choice to resolve the problem is to go back into the Matrix where their enemies are actually in power and put everything at risk. Like they could be captured, that they don't know, like they could be sent to be reiterated once they're inside. Like you're already awake. Just go to the sleeping pod of the main guy. Go unplug him. Yeah, just go. Like it's so stupid.
Yeah,
it's so stupid. Like I was like, surely we're not going this way, or like, are we going to explain why this was necessary at some point?
Yeah,
it's necessary so we can have an action scene, I guess, is the answer.
And I guess to clarify a bit here, like this is stuff that if the character work in that half of the book was working on me, I could probably very easily just whistle past, right? Like this is stuff that if those moments were landing and if those beats were landing, I would be like, well, this doesn't make a lot of sense, but I see how it's doing work for character. And like there is a little bit of that. Like I think the idea that they can't wake Elise up and they have to go in and confront Elise in the dream and force her in the dream to come to this realization, I think that's a cool idea. Like I think that's a cool moment, that part in and of itself. Like I don't think you needed the evil rich people conspiracy and we've got to eliminate. I agree, you could just unplug those guys, boom, done. But the one thing we can't do is we can't wake Elise up. So we have to, in outside the dream, we can't wake her up. The only way to get to her is via the dream. Like I think that's a cool little bit. And also like the way I love the way the dream world is reacting to her emotions, like, you know, the storms, and then when the van crashes like dramatically, like that's her, you know, struggling against the truth of all this stuff. I think those ideas are cool. But yeah, there's so much other stuff mixed in it. I really struggled with it, and that's I think the frustrating thing, and perhaps the reason I got so angry, where, you know, sometimes stupid stuff in books usually just makes me go, oh, that was dumb, and then I just move on, and this stuff made me angry, is because I love so much of everything else going on in this book. Like if it was just like boring and bad from page 1 to page 500 or whatever, I would just be like, this is just not a good book. But like there's so much good stuff here, and then there's stuff like where you just go, what? Huh?
Yeah. I mean, that's that's the thing is there's sort of like two Proctors. There's like delicately handled character drama Proctor, who, you know, goes swimming with this girl that he finds, and all these complicated layered emotions about growing older and his role in the world and losing his job, and
he wants to be a parent, right? And his wife has vehemently denied that, and
his marriage is sort of falling apart, and then there's action hero Proctor, who is a totally different guy, and like it sort of literally is a totally different guy, because when he wakes up from the Matrix, you're just like, and then he remembered his actual life, and he'd basically past that point, which is, again, it's literally 2/3 through the book. No, he doesn't wake up 2/3 through the book, but close enough. Past that point, he's basically not Proctor. He's basically a different character. It's 2/3 through the book is the point where there are enough clues dropped for you to be like, I got it. They're on a spaceship.
Mm-hmm.
They're all in cryosleep on a spaceship, and then it takes. I, I'm sorry, but this would probably be fine if I wasn't already kind of annoyed with the book. But it takes forever to actually get to the point of admitting that, even though you're like, yeah, I got it. Cryosleep. Yep, it's a dream,
Yeah,
shared dream. I get it.
yeah. I don't say this to like toot my horn or anything. I feel like the common thing is that you figure this out well before the book actually
Yeah.
fully spells it out for you. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was. I'll say this: well earlier, it had occurred to me as a possibility that they were on a spaceship because of the idea of the stars being different. I was
Yeah.
like, okay, that spaceship, maybe space colony, maybe
Mm-hmm.
other planet. Um, Many possibilities, right? Like shared dream cryosleep on a generation ship is not necessarily the only possible answer. But then once you get the element of like the stars are different, there's this one particular blue star that they're basically headed toward,
Yeah.
and then you kind of get like, especially as things become more dreamlike and weird, like when he gets to the nursery and we just sort of lose any pretense at the idea that stuff's supposed to make sense. You're just like,
I
I don't think this is real, Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, the nursery is where we just like abandon. Like, I was like, "What the fuck is going on?" I'm
Yeah.
so confused. I'm like, that whole section was like, because you go into the nursery, um, like expecting that to be the reveal of what's going on here, right? Like that everything seems to be building to that. Is like, oh, our main character is going to the nursery. This is it. This is the moment. And then, no, you get no answers. You're just like almost more confused because you're like people are there and then not there, and then you're like, there's what is happening here, and then from there, yeah, it just escalates to oh yeah, spaceship.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. I mean, like again though, I want to focus on some stuff I really did like because
Yeah.
I really liked. I can't remember his name now. It was a funny name. The blind artist character.
I forget. Yeah, I
What was it?
forget.
It started with a P. It's like a was it
Poppy?
Poppy?
Is
Was it
Poppy? Yeah,
Poppy? I
think
think
it
it
was
was Poppy.
Poppy. Yeah.
Yeah. I really liked Poppy. I really liked that idea of like I love the idea of that the book kind of posits is that like you're in this dream world, but like the truth and reality is like pushing its way through eventually. Like I think there's like a one line lip service to the idea that both Proctor and Elise had done this particular thing multiple times through the 100 and something years that they were orbiting the planet, right? That this
Uh-huh.
like in another Matrix comparison, it's like this is this is the thing we've had to do over and over again, and we eventually just delete your memory and get you back in your dream and start over. I don't know if that was true or not. Like it could have just been him bullshitting to Proctor. Like there's nothing else in the book that supports that was what was happening, but there's nothing that's specifically against it. But I do like this idea of like the truth and reality and perhaps your soul pushing its way through
Hmm.
this dream, and the idea that Poppy, because he's blind, because he's lost one of his senses, um, it is like almost more in tuned to that, and more able to quote unquote see, um, than other people are. I thought that was cool. And then I don't know, I liked the moment with him in not in the epilogue, but on the planet when he was like, sometimes I miss being blind. Like it's really interesting stuff there. But
Yeah.
but in like a way that to back to your complaint where some of the stuff feels really tacked on, like the whole mother character, which is eventually revealed to be Proctor's mother, just like I kind of at the end of the book I kind of forgot about her, and I think the book forgets about her too. And then you're just like, oh wait, she didn't know any of this stuff was going on. Like there's a moment where she's like looking around and like, wait, huh, what? And I was like, oh yeah, she was not part of these conversations at all. I forgot about that.
Yeah. No, that's funny because you get the feeling like she's the one who knows everything. She has all the secrets, and it's like, no, she only knows the like inner ring of secrets having to do with like, yeah, the Prosperians, they're not good actually.
Yeah.
We don't like them, and it's like that's yeah, the
Yeah.
stuff about Poppy, I thought that was so I had a stupid theory that was wrong, but I still like my theory, so I'm going to say it anyway, which was that um the reason he was painting people's faces is that like when he went blind in the dream, like his eyes opened in the real world,
Hmm.
and he could like see the people in the capsules around him, and so he was painting what he could see with his waking eyes. That's definitely not textual. I just thought that was a fun idea, so I'm
I
saying
like
it
it.
now.
I accept it, and it is what it is. The truth now.
All right, great.
Makes sense to me. So yeah, I like it. I like it.
I don't know, man. I don't know. I find it. See, this is the worst. This is this is my least favorite conversation to have because it's
Hmm.
when a book is just kind of blah and just kind of bad. I'm just like, okay, whatever.
Yeah.
The problem is this book like really hooked me, and I really kind of fell in love with it in the first 100, 200 pages, and then it let me down really bad. So
Yeah.
that makes
Yeah.
me upset in a way that I wouldn't normally be.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. And to be honest with you, this is kind of my experience with Justin Cronin in general. Like, I don't know if you've read these books. He wrote a trilogy of books, called the Passage trilogy, that I read a while ago now. I don't know how long ago because I've lost all concept of time because I saw on Twitter today that the Lego movie is a decade old, which is just the most absurd thing I've ever heard in my entire life, but
Uh-huh.
is
Yeah.
apparently true. But Stephen King recommended this series, and I read it and I enjoyed the first book quite a bit, and then it just kind of from there, like if you take this book we read and break it up amongst three books, I guess you could say I felt very similar to the Ferryman, right? Where like really enjoyed the first part of it, and then my enjoyment of it kind of steadily went down as the series went on. And uh, that I mean, I think he's a good writer. Like I think like prose wise, a lot of this stuff is well written. It's easy to read. It's a page turner, but yeah, like it feels like sometimes we get really nerdy with sci-fi, right? And there's these incredibly intellectual science fiction writers that really want to get the details of all this zany sci-fi stuff they're doing very very accurately and very very right, and they want to think it out from beginning to end. And I don't think he's that type of writer with the science fiction stuff. Like I don't think he really thought about any of this stuff more than just was necessary to push the plot forward.
Yeah.
And that's not necessarily a bad thing, right? Like you don't have to do that, but it did leave me in a place where I was just like, this is stupid.
Uh-huh.
This is stuff. All your explanations for why people made the decisions they made was stupid.
Yeah.
Except for the only person I completely related to was the first guy that woke up, looked at the ice planet, and said, "Nah, fuck this. I'm going back to sleep."
Yeah. Right. No, so that's funny. No, you reminded me like I did think about the idea of what do you do if you have this like ultra futuristic spaceship where you can just live in a dream world where it's not just a dream world. Like everyone else in the dream is a person, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
And then you get to your destination and you realize it's not habitable. Like I was actually somewhat excited about the possibility of like, oh, what if the planet is just literally uninhabitable and they can't turn around, and so they just have to live in the dream world forever. And
Yeah.
like that would be like an interesting ending. I genuinely was like, oh, I'm excited about this, like because it's not that it's a total fabrication. Clearly, there are elements that are a fabrication,
Hmm.
and then you can begin to ask questions like, well, how do you set it up? Like, how do you set up this dream world to sort of keep people sane and is this a stable situation? I think for a second there, I was like, well, maybe that's what happened. Like maybe that's literally what Prospera and the NX is that 500 years ago they all woke up, saw that the planet was uninhabitable, and said fuck this and went back to sleep, and this is the consequence of their choice. Like that would
Yeah.
I was prepared for that to be the twist,
Yeah.
and then it was like, no, it's not that. It's just
Yeah.
it's just stupid.
I mean, the argument that Otto makes at the end of the book is basically like, Proctor, you idiot. Like, it doesn't matter what you do, society is going to eventually reform this exact model,
Hmm.
no matter what, right? That like, oh, you can keep all the rich people asleep, and let everyone else, all the annex people, go. Like, but eventually they're gonna form the same system that we had here, right? And I don't think the book says anything that makes me believe that was not an entirely accurate read of
Right.
things, right?
Well, not only that, but it's weird to say like, so did you force all the rich people to stay? Like how did you like surely not, because that would
They
be,
just never woke them up.
that's horrifying.
Yeah, they just never woke them up. Like, I get they're rich people, right? Yeah, like they're rich people, so they're
They're
bad, but like
they're
they're also still human beings.
that like yeah, they were rich people hundreds of years ago, and they've just been living in a simulation and basically mind slaved for hundreds of years,
Yeah,
and now you just take away the rest of their existence by trapping them in this fantasy and not telling them.
yeah.
Oh my god. I mean,
But it's a sunny ending. Like, you don't understand, Matt. At the end of the book, they're like in a school and they're like talking about like how difficult, like, they're not the budget, and like they got to fix the roof, and
right,
it's
right.
just so peaceful
It's
and
just
wonderful. And look, the rich people are learning. They're learning how to be good people. But they're going to go back to Earth to do what? Why are they going?
yeah.
Can you answer that question? Why is the ship going back to Earth? Why?
You know where they would have learned to be good people is on the hard scrabble surface of Ice Planet.
Oh, you mean the
Um,
ice planet that like desperately needs as many able-bodied hands to work the land and grow
uh-huh.
food as possible? That is like desperate for manual labor.
Yeah.
Yeah, I I I,
I,
I agree.
I really sort of love. Okay, so I sort of both love and hate to do this thing where I decide that the book is saying something completely different than what it obviously is saying, so that I can enjoy it more.
Hmm.
But it's funny to consider that Pro, uh, Proctor is actually just a monster who like recognized that um, the ice planet was a death sentence, and there was no way human life could survive on a planet with an average surface temperature of like 40 degrees or whatever,
Hmm.
because you can't grow crops and there's no natural resources, and everyone's going to die. And so he just leaves all of the poor people who've been causing him problems there to die, and then turns around, knowing that the last hope of humanity is actually the prosper and the rich people on the ship. He just turns around and he's like, "Yeah, we'll see if we'll
Yeah,
go back to Earth. Maybe everyone there is dead too, and we can
yeah,
just like fix that planet, and then we can rule there."
yeah.
I like this. That makes me enjoy the book more. So
So Karen is offering an interesting theory in chat right now. She's saying that that the Kalis, the planet, is actually just Earth, that went through a nuclear winter, and they never really left at all, and
ah,
they've just been orbiting the planet the entire time.
love it.
And yeah, I like
Yeah,
that a lot. I mean, look. Essentially, what Cronin is doing here with keeping all the rich people asleep and sending them back to Earth is, the argument is, you are the people that made the planet the way it is, right? It was your extravagance and richness and consumption, blah blah blah, that made that destroyed the planet. And then you, because you're rich, got to buy your way onto humanity's salvation and flee from the problem you created. And by putting you back to sleep and sending you back to that problem, Cronin is essentially saying like, you don't get to run away from the consequences of your actions. Um, which, sure, I guess I still feel that is incredibly inhumane. like even if it's if it's like theoretically fundamentally an
uh,
accurate statement, like it's just it still feels harsh to
uh,
me.
yeah. I mean, it's such a like reflexive, flattening sort of like current year political thing to say so that
Right,
people will
right.
cheer. It's like this is it's nowhere near the like depth and sensitivity that he's shown toward character, and it's just like, oh yeah, you've committed the original sin of being rich, and so it's not clearly thought out. It
Yeah.
does, like if that is what he's trying to do, which I unfortunately think he is, because apparently like part of the motivation for the book was like the idea of like the excesses of capitalism
Hmm.
and Elon
Yeah.
Musk's private space program, and I'm just
Yeah.
like, okay, maybe you should have let that one cook a little bit longer, because this just doesn't strike me as a mature take on this whole situation.
Yeah.
Um,
It is interesting that in this dynamic that was set up of the have and have nots, Proctor had no qualms with putting himself and the entire member of his crew into the rich, lavish, get to relax and have everyone do everything for you lifestyle.
yeah,
like, I thought that was an interesting choice. Like, you think you would maybe like separate the crew amongst the annex people and the rich people, but nah, we're all. Of course, I'm gonna benefit from this. You want
yeah,
me to be one of the working class? No, hell
yeah.
no.
Right. I mean, real life Proctor is a horrible person, actually.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
I think so. Yeah,
like Proctor inside the dream, you could argue at least that he's gone through a sort of purgatory over his like multiple lifetimes,
yeah, yeah.
where he's been driven to the point where he chooses to be a ferryman as his profession, because he sort of senses the need to like move on, right?
Mm-hmm.
Metaphorically, literally,
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah,
And and he seems like a better guy, although he's still sort of an asshole. He does cheat on his wife, and he
yeah.
does like kick a guy's ass for trying to stop his father from running away,
Yeah, he
which is
almost kills
in the
that fucking dude.
it in the moment understandable, I guess, but it's like whatever. Well,
Yeah.
didn't they just try to pin the fact that the other guy died on him? He didn't really kill the guy, did he?
No, he didn't kill the guy. He
Yeah,
actually finds him
yeah, yeah, yeah,
in an office later. He opens the door and it's like, hey, it's that guy that
yeah,
you were fired for killing. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. That's good. I mean, I liked all that stuff where he like is heartbroken to have been fired, even though he was going to quit anyway. Like, I
Yeah.
thought that was very relatable and so
Mm-hmm.
forth.
I agree. There's a lot like that's the thing. I think you said it perfectly. Is there's so much good, enjoyable stuff here that like the fact that we've spent so much of this conversation just talking about all this stuff that doesn't make any fucking sense is more frustrating.
Hmm.
Because it's not even about potential. It's just about like, oh, this is a really fun book for so much of the book, and then it just like dissolves into head scratching,
Hmm.
and yeah. Um,
And then there's a storm that destroys the house, and no one thinks that's weird.
I like again, that's a thing in retrospect
Yeah,
makes
right,
sense, right? It
right,
makes
right.
sense that like no one's like because at the moment I think when it happens like he almost like it's a tornado very clearly and
Uh-huh.
like in his like mixed dream state he doesn't know what a tornado is.
Uh-huh.
Right? Like he says, oh, this strange swirling cyclone, and I was like, oh, maybe they've never had tornadoes here before. But
Yeah,
then like 10 pages later he's like, oh, it was a tornado, and I was like, oh,
yeah,
okay. Well,
yeah,
I don't like. Do these kind of storms happen here often? Because no one's talking about how there was just a giant fucking storm. And yeah, in retrospect, it's dream logic. Like a lot of what's happening in this world is operating on dream logic.
yeah, yeah. I mean, and you're totally right. Obviously, it's just I think it's kind of inescapable. It's inextricably tied to the way the book is designed, where um, okay, so I think it's just not a good idea to have a sort of mystery box story where you're following around a character who is he's not literally a detective, but he's the guy who's trying to unravel the mystery.
Mm-hmm.
And then to have that guy be sort of like severely mentally compromised is not really going to make for a satisfying mode of storytelling. So like you can take Lost and think about like the example of the characters in Lost, or you can take like um any of these sort of dystopian book stories. Like I was thinking about Equilibrium, the movie,
Mm-hmm.
because it's my favorite movie, obviously. Um, and it's about like guy lives in dystopian society, begins to sense that things are actually wrong, and it's like, okay, what if you take any of these scenarios and then you add the element that like when something really weird happens, they just immediately forget about it or don't notice it or whatever. You as the viewer are just like, what are we doing? It's so frustrating. It's so frustrating from the reader point of view. And
Yeah.
I get that that's the way I get that that's the plot, like that's the way the book is designed, but I'm just saying it's a very frustrating way of doing things.
Well, and it's not even that like the book is like drawing attention to it in a way that makes you go, huh, right? It's just like have one character ask another character about the storm, and like they're evasive and weird. It's just nobody ever talks about it
Hmm.
ever.
Yeah.
There was a giant storm that destroyed a house, and like nobody's like, hey, how about these storms lately? Like nobody says that. It's just so weird. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. The storm surgically destroyed the one house that contained some kind of mystery that we're curious about, and then
Mm-hmm.
um, yeah. I mean, also the idea that nobody ever questioned the idea of, wait a minute, so we go to the island, and then some different person comes back. What is this? What are we
Mm-hmm.
doing?
Yeah.
Um, and well, I'm trying to think. There was at least one other sort of like setting mystery. I think the other setting mystery was just like, when is this and where is this, and why does no one wonder about that
Mm-hmm.
fact? Because it's like, okay, it's clearly like our future, because they talk about, our artistic history
Yeah, they
of
reference Plato's cave in
Plato's
this
cave, and
in this story, in this
like
Plato's cave story. They reference Plato's cave. Yeah.
the specific musicians are
Yeah.
referenced.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so you're like, okay, it's the future, but like the tech, but like it's low tech. What's happening? And you're like, you keep waiting for the moment when they're like, ah, yes, well, we all colonized Prospera after the great. It never comes up, and no one wonders about it, and it's not addressed. It's not. I mean, it's addressed, but it's addressed after hundreds of pages, and you're
Yep.
like,
Yep.
okay, yeah, okay,
Yeah. David asks an interesting question. I wonder how the story looked before versus after editing. Like, was this a story that was heavily changed in the edit to improve, to tighten, or to pad, or change the ending, alter the ending? I mean, an interesting question. One, of course, we're completely unable to answer in any way. But yeah, I mean, editing, like in film and TV, editing does a lot to a story. It changes it. And yeah, I mean, we'll never know, but it does. I guess. Would you say, Matt, that it feels like a book that was changed in the edit to you?
yeah. I think so. I mean, like I said, it feels like it was written with two different premises in mind, and it
Mm-hmm.
also kind of feels like some parts of it were more inspired and felt cohesive and felt like a story,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
and then it suddenly sort of truncates and becomes a different story.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if that's a phenomenon of editing or just a phenomenon of like him knowing exactly, following some stroke of inspiration until he hits a wall, and then he's like, well, I don't know where this goes from here, but I got this generation ship idea. Maybe I can shoehorn that in somehow.
Yeah.
Um, so I don't so much know if it's editing as just like a sort of either getting stuck or not knowing where to go, and then making the
Yeah.
best of it.
I mean, there's a thing that can happen in storytelling sometime, and I think you probably know this. Because you write a lot more than I do. Like where like you're sitting there kind of brainstorming, and you're like, I have this idea, and it's not enough for a story, and I have this idea, and it's not enough for a story. But like, oh, what if I combine them? And the second you do that, you like in your head see like a lot of potential, and so you're like, yes, this is it. This is what I was looking for. This is the key. And you start writing it, and you're pushing it along with these two things, and like eventually you get to a point where you're like, oh wait, wait a minute. What sounded good in my head and what worked in my head as I was mixing these two stories together, when I actually put it down on a page, isn't working. And maybe I can fix it in the edit. Maybe I can like manipulate and push these stories together in a way, like, but ultimately doesn't ever come together the way I thought it would when I first brainstormed the idea.
Yeah, I mean, I think something in that general space happens pretty often. I mean, in fact, I would say as I've gotten older, one thing I've learned is like, if there's no sort of spark of aliveness to the idea anymore, then you should just give up on it. And one good way to kill that spark is to sort of like artificially like jam cool seeming pieces into it
Yeah.
to be like like a child, with their Lego set who starts adding like random other pieces of other Lego sets onto it because they're different colors and that looks cool to them. It's like, okay, I can see the impulse that would make you want to do that, but you're destroying the synergy and like holistic impact of the thing that you're trying to do. And if you can't make it work as the specific thing that it is, and you think you're going to make it work by plugging in this other thing, all you're actually doing is you're like sort of killing both of the things,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and extinguishing whatever spark of inspiration what made you like these things.
Yeah.
um,
And I say this not from the experience of writing fiction a lot, but I do know I've had like ideas for essays and like, explorations of concepts, and like in your head when you come up with the idea it sounds really good and you're like, oh yeah, there's enough here, and then you actually sit down to write it and you quickly realize, oh, there's not enough here. Actually, it's very easy to fill the page in your head when you don't have to actually write each individual word, and then suddenly you have to do that and you're like, oh no. This doesn't work.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I could feel on a sentence to sentence basis like this was written from a place of inspiration, and I love this. And Justin Cronin is a fantastic writer. And then, like a few pages later, what the hell is this? This is sub YA level. Like just putting one brick on top of the next brick because we have to get to that thing over there that needs to happen. And I didn't like that at all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think I think I think that's all we have to say about it. I don't know. I'm still angry about the ending, but I will say that like this conversation helped me appreciate the parts of the book I liked more, which I think is always good.
Yeah. Yeah, me too. Me too. I literally, yeah, I don't want to come away thinking like just thoroughly garbage. Like I can see liking something else written by Justin Cronin. And this doesn't make me want to say, oh God, I'm writing this guy off. Surely this guy's never written anything good. I can imagine like something from the sensibility that created the first third of this book, creating a really cool story. It's just that's not what this story was.
I think you might like the passage. Like I said, I didn't enjoy the next two books in that series half as much as I enjoyed the first, but I think the first is an interesting concept that is executed pretty well. It's been a while, so I don't remember all the details of it, but I remember really liking it. So you might like the passage.
Cool. All right.
All right. So we are about to close the poll for next month's book. I'm going to send the link again if you showed up late. So please take a few minutes right now to vote for next month's poll. We will close that, tally the results, and then we will know what book we're reading next week.
By the way, the TV show I was thinking of was the American version of the show Life on Mars.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Didn't know they made an American version of that show.
And the ending of the American version is nothing like the ending of the British version.
All right. Just going to refresh this a few more times. We are going to officially lock it right now. Oh, some changes at the very end here.
Oh, goodness.
But I don't believe they're enough. Let me refresh it one more time. All right. The poll is officially locked, and we do have a winner, barely eking it out. God, that got way closer than I thought at the end there. It was looking like Tana French was going to run away with it, and then it got really close. But the book that we are going to be reading for next month is The Searcher by Tana French. We are big Tana French fans on this book club. One of her Dublin Detective Series books is one of the first books we ever covered on the show, The Secret Place, a book we both loved very much. And I have read every single Tana French book, including The Searcher. I did read The Searcher but a sequel to The Searcher is coming out this year. So I saw that someone had nominated this, and I was like, oh, this is perfect because I can refresh myself on this book before I read the sequel. So it is a mystery novel. She writes mystery novels. The Dublin Murder Squad series is a series of books about detectives on Dublin's murder squad in the Dublin police. They're very, very good books, and like the way she does it is there's a detective in one book, and then they're partners with the detective, and then the next book is from that other detective's point of view on a different case, and it kind of leads through all of those books like over time. But then she made this book, The Searcher, which is not a Dublin Murder Squad book. It is about an American who moves to Ireland, American cop who moves to a small town in Ireland after he retires, and he gets caught up in some crime related shenanigans. So it's her doing something a little bit different, but in, I think, an interesting way. She is, if you've never read Tana French, I like can't recommend her enough. Her prose is beautiful and haunting and incredible. She builds really good characters and explores a lot of in the Dublin Murder Squad. She was exploring a lot of some problems in Irish society, and I mean, obviously didn't speak to me personally on that because I don't live in Ireland, but I thought were just beautiful books.
David asked, isn't that the plot of Hot Fuzz?
No, he wasn't an American in
That's
Hot
true.
Fuzz. He was just coming from London.
But he did move to a very, very small town.
And it is all for the greater good.
It is all for the good, yeah. Oh my God.
The Searcher is a very good book. I think you all are going to really, really enjoy it. And I can't wait to read it again. So we will be meeting here on I believe the 1st of March 1st, to discuss this book 4 weeks from tonight. So get the book, start reading, and I hope you folks really enjoy it. And I think you will do what I did the first time we covered Tana French on this book club. Was I immediately got every other book she's ever written and read them all, and I spent the next 6 months reading everything Tana French has ever written because she's wonderful.
Well, I'm super excited. I love Tana French. I have not read everything she's written because I want to spread them out over the remainder of my years so that I can.
That's probably a smart thing to do, because I have basically since I did that just patiently waited every few months going to TanaFrench.com and being haven't written a new book yet, Tana. Get off your ass.
How long has it been? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So can't wait to talk about that with y'all. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. I'm sorry. I know there's people that like this book more than us, and I think it was a good conversation regardless. I do kind of inherently hate when the conversations have the tone and tenor of this. I think we tried to be as charitable and fair as possible, but yeah, there was just a lot of stuff in this book that annoyed me. But overall, some pretty good stuff too.
Yep, I agree.
Yeah. And if you're listening to this after the fact, if you're listening to the audio recording, hope you'll come talk about Tana French with us next month. If you've never read her again, I'm going to stress this. You're in for a good time.
Yeah. So yeah, thanks for joining us. If you like what we do here at Doof Media and you want to see more of it, then please head on over to our Patreon at patreon.com/doofmedia and consider donating to support our organization. Again, any available donation level on the Patreon will give you access to voting for books for us to talk about, and a bunch of other exclusive features and cool bonus podcasts and stuff like that. We try to make it worth your while. So go check that out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And if you have any questions, comments, or just want to reach out to us, you can always find us over on x.com at Doof Media, or email us doofmedia@gmail.com, or find us on Reddit. That's r/Doof Media. That's going to do it for us this month. Thank you all so much. Thank you for all the kind words. Everyone's being very nice in chat. We really appreciate that. Glad you folks enjoyed the conversation, and we'll see you in 4 weeks. See you next month.
Bye.
All right. Sometimes we stick around after the stream, but we're gonna go. Matt is very, very sleepy. It's been a long week for us. Matt is going out of town next week, so we pre-recorded some stuff this week, and it was a long late night of recording this week. So
Yeah.
we're gonna take off. But thank you guys. Hello, Billy. Sorry you just joined at the very end of the stream, but hope you join book club later. It is a lot of fun. I think these people in chat can attest to that. So thanks, guys. We'll see you next month.
Bye.